What's up, guys? Kennan here from Marshall Goldman Motor Sales, and today we're talking about one of my all-time favorite cars. This is the Ford GT. Now, I'm not talking about the new one with the V6. This is the one that came with the manual and the V8, and I think it's one of the greatest cars ever made. Today we're going to go over some details about this car so you can understand why it's so important, some of the design, the heritage, as well as the engineering, to give you a better picture of why I believe this is one of the greatest cars ever built. So this car was built to celebrate 100 years of the Ford Motor Company, and although this is a design element that's talked about a lot, initially you see it right here. You actually see the 100 in the headlight design, which is a cool little touch. Obviously, it doesn't say the same thing on the other side because it's the mirror image, so it's 001. But you know, it's kind of a cool a little touch that they put in this car. And again, this is a special car that Ford made for a really special celebration. So I don't think you can get a better birthday present for 100 years than building one of the greatest cars ever. So to celebrate 100 years, Ford chose the design of the Ford GT40 to bring into the modern era. They made it wider, longer, and taller. The original car sat at 40 inches. This sits somewhere between 43 and 44 inches. And Ford wanted to call this the Ford GT40. But because there is a continuation company that made replica GT40s into the 80s and still owned all the rights to the name GT40, Ford themselves couldn't call it that. They had to call it the Ford GT instead. That's how it's got its name. So one of the key features about this car, again, the doors. Because when you open them, they have a roof that sticks into the car. A lot of people talk about this. The way the car is parked now is perfect because you literally need to open about that much to get in and out comfortably. But if the car is parked any closer than that, like it's basically impossible to get in and out of this car. So for anybody who owns one, you always need to park in a corner spot where you can open the door out, not hit anything. Just give yourself plenty of room to get in and out, and then it's fine. But it is an unusual design. I can't think of any other car that has, you know, part of the roof comes with the door when you open it. But it's just a unique kind of quirk to the Ford GT. So once you're inside the Ford GT, it's a really comfortable place to sit. People ask about these egg carton crates if they're uncomfortable. Honestly, you don't notice them at all. Again, that's a throwback design to the Le Mans car. But part of the reason they're so comfortable is these seats are actually the same ones that you find in the Ferrari Enzo, just with a different covering. And man, they're very nice. I'm 6 feet tall and not the thinnest of people, and I fit beautifully in this car. And then when you're sitting in it, you really sort of get an idea of how analog this car is. All the gauges are laid out in a really easy to read fashion. You know, rev counter is right in front of you, speedo's off to the right. You know, it's a true driver's car. So speaking of being a driver's car, ultimately what you really want, in addition to a good engine and transmission, is a great chassis. And that's what this car has. And that's because it is a super plastic form frame. Now, that's not some American marketing thing, you know, super plastic. It's actually a technique that's used to mold the frame. So basically, you take a sheet of aluminum, you heat it up to 450 or 500 degrees Celsius, and then you can actually use plastic molding methods like thermoforming to actually mold it like you would a piece of plastic. The result of that is that it actually makes it a lot stronger. It makes the metal and the design, the frame itself, quite a bit stronger. It's a technique that Ford really hadn't done much with sports cars at the time, but it makes sense again to find it in a car like this. Adding to that structural rigidity, you have a friction stirred center tunnel. So the main piece of metal that runs from front to back on this car was friction stirred. What does that mean? Basically, you take a bit and you rotate it and you meld the metal together. It generates a lot of heat from the spinning, and that friction is what creates the weld. You don't really see this in applications generally, but you only really see it when it needs to be a significantly high strength area that a car is being welded. So again, for this car, chassis stiffness was one of the most important things that Ford could do to take on cars like the Ferrari 360 and F430, and that's exactly what they did. Another part that really indicates that this is a true driver's car is it only came with one transmission, and that was a 6-speed manual transmission. This is a Ricardo box. It's a really sweet 6-speed manual, and again, you know, the new Ford GT comes with a dual clutch, which is a phenomenal transmission in its own right. But this was sort of the pinnacle of analog cars. So having a manual transmission, having that third pedal really makes a difference. It makes you involved with the experience. And again, that's why this is one of the greatest cars ever. So here in the rear view window, you know, the one with the view, you find Ford's 5.4 liter supercharged V8. Trucks out 550 horsepower and 500 foot-pounds of torque. Now, this car in its day did 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds and would hit 205 miles an hour. So those are pretty big numbers. And when you consider the price point, this car started at $139,000. Ford later raised it to $149,000 for a non-heritage GT. And as a starting price, like, that's pretty reasonable considering this car's competition at the time was the Ferrari 360. This car makes significantly more power than the 360, and it's really in a different league altogether. So, for that Ford versus Ferrari rivalry, Ford was really, throwing the V8 hammer that they had at the situation. And as a result, this car is still modern day fast. So again, native to that 6-speed manual, it's a really enjoyable, really visceral driving experience. So to wrap it up, the Ford GT, again, really is the pinnacle of analog technology. With its manual transmissions, great engine, wonderful chassis, great design, it's guaranteed to be a future collectible. We already see prices rising on these cars, and they're at a pretty solid point right now, and they're going to continue to go up because there's nothing like this. You can't get another car like this anymore. So if you want to see more on this one, you can go to marshallgoldmanoh.com and check it out. We also have a Golf Heritage GT right now with basically delivery miles. Extremely low mileage car, definitely a museum quality car. You can go check that out too, and that color scheme is to die for. But as always, if you have any questions, be sure to leave them down in the comments below and I'll get back to you guys. And as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.